Welcome to everyone who's joining right now. We'll wait a couple minutes to start officially. But yes, so for those of you who don't know, welcome to today's webinar, our lunchtime sessions. We usually have these on the first or second Friday of the month. My name is Grace. I am the operations manager here at the Dyslexia Association of London. Today we are joined by Helen Mee. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did, yeah.
You're great, perfect. And she's here with us from Calibre Audio. So today's webinar is titled, Is Listening to Audiobooks Helpful for Dyslexia? So Helen has a wealth of knowledge in making reading accessible for everyone. Her and her team at Calibre Audio, you may have met them at our conference in October, have experience working with dyslexics and specifically adults with dyslexia on how to make audio books more accessible to those in our community and how it can support comprehension, reduce anxiety, and become a valuable learning tool. So this session is welcome to everyone who's navigating dyslexia, but also, of course, if you're a student, educator, or just curious to learn more, please stay tuned. This session, we're going to aim to have it be around 45 minutes, more or less, and we're leaving a few minutes, around 15 minutes at the end for question and answers. So feel free to pop in any questions to the chat. If they're urgent, I might tell Helen we have a question that goes specifically with a certain slide, but otherwise I'll try to keep a lot of the questions to the end so that we can reserve that space for a more of a discussion and question and answer session. I think that's all for me. We're a few minutes in, so I think we are good to start. I'm going to maximize my screen with your presentation and I'll hand it over to you, Helen.
Okay, thank you very much, Grace. Thanks for the great introduction there. So Grace is sharing my slides. So if for any reason you can't see them or they're not moving, then do let us know in the chat. But I'm really grateful that Grace can drive. I struggle to multitask. So thank you for the invitation to chat to you and share a little bit about audiobooks today. We can move on to the next slide, Grace. So I've started just with a little slide about Calibre Audio, in case you didn't come along to the conference at the end of last year, and you're thinking, who is Helen and what is this organisation all about? So we're a national charity and we specialise in providing audiobooks to people that live with any form of print disability, whether they live in the UK or they're based overseas. And we have over 18,000 audiobook titles in our collection. And every day we send out or send over for streaming over 1,500 books to our members. So you might think, well, what's a print disability and how does that relate to dyslexia? So one of the leading print disabilities that we support is dyslexia, but it actually encompasses a whole range of different health conditions and disabilities. So essentially, it's any disability, health condition, neurodivergent condition, or learning difference that impacts on someone's ability to read and enjoy reading print. And that's whether they have difficulty seeing, turning the pages of a book, comprehending, or concentrating on text. So we've been around since 1974, and back in those days, audiobooks were really not a thing. So we filled the gap. But what we know today is that audiobooks have kind of come into their own, and there's lots of other providers in the marketplace. So I will talk about other people at the end of the presentation as well. But essentially, we've been around so that people can immerse themselves in stories, whatever genre they love, for over 50 years now. So on to the next slide. So what we'll cover today, so I will attempt to talk about the following things. So how audiobooks support comprehension and reading, and building reading confidence. I'll also talk about the connection between audiobooks and reducing anxiety and stress. I'll talk about some practical ways that we can use audiobooks in education and in everyday life. And then I will talk about where we can find free and affordable audiobooks. Okay, so diving in, and obviously if you do have any questions or any comments, do feel free to pop in the chat so that we can get some engagement going on. So there's lots of data emerging as audiobooks become more popular about their benefits in terms of supporting people's comprehension and also in terms of reading confidence. So I haven't cited all my academic references. So if you are an educator or a professional and you want them, I'm very happy to share where I got the information from, but I've kept it simple for the purposes of the slide. So listening to audio can help you better absorb and understand the material. And one of the reasons is because it allows you to focus on the meaning rather than focusing on decoding the words and holding in your short-term memory what you've read before. So audiobooks can ease frustration, they can boost confidence and make reading much more enjoyable. And the other critical thing is that you can go at your own pace. So when you're listening, you can choose how long you listen for. You can also alter the speed at which you listen to the narration, and you can rewind or repeat sections if you need to. And there is evidence that listening to an audiobook while following along with the text can actually help bridge the gap between decoding the words and assigning meaning. And that's in particular for people with dyslexia. So receiving the information both visually and audibly reinforces the word recognition, it improves fluency, it builds vocabulary, and it supports the development of higher level comprehension skills. And I know that we're an adult audience today, but you might be interested to know that part of my role as head of communities and learning is researching at the moment the impact of using audiobooks alongside print material within schools. So I'm really happy if people are interested to know more when we do questions and discussion at the end, if you want to know a bit more about what kind of the research findings within a school setting are. And that's something I'm really passionate about. So I'm a mum to 2 neurodivergent young people, and my youngest child really struggled to learn how to read. And in school, they weren't keen to screen her for dyslexia. They weren't really very keen to provide much practical support for her. And what we did was during COVID lockdown is we were reading to her ourselves, and we discovered a commercial audiobook provider at that time. And what we found was that Anna really benefited from hearing the story and following in the book, so much so that when she went back to school, school said, well, what have you done? Like, Anna's readings come on loads. You know, what have you done differently? So we shared that it was that combination of audio and following on with the text that had really made an impact for her. And she did go on to be assessed for dyslexia, not that the school did that for us. We as parents paid, which I'm sure most of you are sort of familiar with that scenario. It's really difficult to get assessed unless you're prepared to pay for an assessment. And so it didn't come as a surprise to me that Anna is severely dyslexic. But actually, because of combining audiobooks with printed reading, she now has so much confidence. She's still quite a slow reader if you just give her the text on its own, but her reading age is now matching her chronological age, which is a position we just never thought we would be in when she was younger. So I'm really passionate about the opportunity that audiobooks give, particularly young people in school, but for any age. Okay, so on to the next slide.
Yes, I'm just seeing some people asked for the slides to be bigger, so I'm going to try to fix that, everyone. Just okay. Hopefully this makes it a little bit bigger for everyone. There we go. That should be bigger.
That's much better. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So moving on to why are audiobooks a good thing in relation to sort of mental health and well-being and reducing anxiety. So the first thing to say here is that there is a lot of literature about the value of reading. And when people say reading, often the academics mean reading print. We at Calibre find that really frustrating because for us, listening to audiobooks counts as reading. So I've popped on this slide an image from a scientific paper, and the title of it was "Audiobooks or Reading? To Our Brains, It Doesn't Matter." And this is actually the brain scans showing people listening to an audiobook at the top compared to reading a print book at the bottom. And you'll see that there's a lot of similarity, almost they look the same. So what we know to be true is that the input, whether it's audio or if it's reading from the printed word, actually stimulates the same parts of the brain. So I've got a link there listed on the side from the Mental Health Foundation about why reading can be good for mental health, which is a really interesting article. But what I wanted to say was that actually it applies whether we're thinking about audiobooks or in regard to reading print. So the next slide that I have is a quote that I'll read to you. And this is an American therapist, counselor, and mental health consultant writer. She's quite well published, mostly in the States, not so much here. But I really liked this quote. So it says, "If you struggle with stress, depression, or anxiety, audiobooks may offer a reprieve from distressing thoughts. Not only can they help to boost your mood in the moment, but they can also help disrupt the negative thinking patterns that may be dragging your mental health down." So in fact, reading for as little as 6 minutes at a time has been shown to slash stress levels by more than 2/3, and audiobooks have been found to have the same effects on the brain as hard copy books. So that for me is really important. And, working for an audiobook charity, that really chimes for me. And what's interesting is that actually the reading impact or the listening impact is more than some of the sort of traditional things that we are suggested to do when we're feeling low. So this impact is more than if you have a cup of tea with a friend, or it's more than if you take a walk, and more than if you listen to music. So if you haven't given audiobooks a go, there's my kind of call to action that actually it can have quite a striking impact. Okay, so on to the next slide. And so just to sort of draw out some of those reasons why listening to stories in particular, but actually it can be non-fiction if that's your bag, can improve mental health and well-being. So the first one is about how tuning into a story can calm and comfort us for reasons of kind of playing into the age-old kind of tradition of oral storytelling and memories of childhood. So for many people, the first time that they experience a book or a story is actually not when they read it for themselves. It's when they're a young person and they're being read to by parents or grandparents or other loved ones, or even a favorite teacher or nursery practitioner. So it really sort of plays into that kind of feeling kind of safe in childhood. But also it's that oral tradition of storytelling that in every culture around the world, before we had kind of academic education as we know it today, how did we share information from generation to generation? It was all about oral storytelling. So there's definitely a connection there. The second reason that I've said here is that actually stories can be an antidote in today's modern world to visual overstimulation. So today, many people spend hours and hours at a time looking at a computer screen or looking at a smartphone or tablet screen. And even, for relaxation, often we choose to play computer games or watch television. So actually, if you choose to listen to an audiobook as a pure audio experience, it's really good in terms of resting your eyes, and using your own imagination. And as that quote from the American counselor, Marissa, stated, they can help us break free from negative thoughts. So it can provide kind of a break in your own thought processes. So we've all had those nights where we can't get to sleep because the same sort of negative thought is swimming in our brain, just repeating over and over. So there's good evidence to show that audiobooks allow us distraction and also escapism. So escape to a completely different world, something completely different from our day-to-day, if we so choose. Audiobooks can help us develop empathy and experience the world from someone else's perspective. And the other thing that I really like about audiobooks is they can help us feel more purposeful in our day. So turning a boring commute or time doing chores into something more useful. So I used to work for a London-based charity, and I live in the home counties, and I would spend between 3 and 4 hours commuting every day. And actually, if I could turn that train journey into something a bit more interesting, that made me feel better about myself. So, you know, audiobooks, podcasts are great on a long commute. If you're fortunate enough not to have a long commute to work, many of us get to work hybrid these days, or even work from home. If you, like me, hate doing some of the more mundane chores around the house, listening to an audiobook again can make you feel a bit more purposeful. So whether you're you know, preparing the tea or doing the hoovering, the great thing about audiobooks is you can multitask quite effectively and use that time. And then the final point on here, which is more than just kind of a solitary benefit, it's about connection. So if you enjoy audiobooks, you can join a book group. At Calibre, we run accessible book groups where most people listen to the audiobook and come having listened to the audiobook. But you know, you have book groups and reading groups meeting in pubs and community settings across the country, where actually it doesn't matter whether you read the book or you listen to the audiobook, you can still engage in conversation with others. So it's as much about enjoying the book as it is chatting and connecting with other people. Okay, on to the next slide. And I just wanted to highlight, in case you weren't aware, that as I mentioned, there's lots of scientific evidence about the benefits of reading for mental health. And there's a scheme called Reading on Prescription, which has been championed by the UK's Reading Agency. And this is an image of the front cover of quite a lengthy guide for GPs and other primary care health professionals. And so it's published by the National Association of Primary Care. And it's, as the title suggests, all about the value of reading and books. And giving those out as a social prescription rather than, you know, a medical drug. So my question is, well, it's great that there's reading on prescription and that's highlighted so widely, but what about audiobooks on prescription? Because as far as I can see, the literature doesn't really make mention of audiobooks, and I feel passionately that actually audio is an accessible format that should be widely available. So I don't know about you, but if I'm tired or stressed or anxious, you know, I would prefer to listen to something rather than reading something, especially if it's quite dense. So yeah, that's another one of my little calls to action, that it's great that reading on prescription gets so much press and is so highly regarded by healthcare professionals, but what about audiobooks? Okay. On to the next slide. So Grace asked me to talk about some of the practical ways to use audiobooks. So obviously education is a really obvious one. So audiobooks have emerged as a powerful tool to help dyslexic students in particular. And as I mentioned before, pairing audiobooks with printed or digital text, there is evidence to show that following along while listening reinforces the understanding of the text. It helps with word recognition, spelling, and vocabulary development. So I can obviously talk a bit more about the school's work if that's of interest to you all. I won't dive too much into it now because I know today we have an adult audience, but it can genuinely help with absorbing the information and in terms of your own kind of reading confidence. The other thing to note is that when listening to audiobooks, to get the most out of it, you're encouraged to use active listening and note taking. So making your own notes, being able to summarize in your own words what you're hearing, and to stop and ask questions whilst you're listening. So this all helps improve comprehension and critical thinking, and also just to make sure that you're exploring your own understanding of the material. So it's really good to question when you're listening, does that resonate with me? Does that chime? Have I seen examples of that in my own life? So yeah, adopting a more active way. So not just accepting the information that you're hearing, but actually stopping, pausing, and reflecting is really helpful. My next tip is to use a variety of different audiobooks. So in Calibre's own collection, we initially were very much about fiction, but over the years our collection has grown considerably, and we have quite a lot of non-fiction and biographies available, and kind of an expanding market around kind of business books and study guides is something that we're getting into. And also I'm seeing commercial audio providers delving into that area and providing a much greater breadth of different genres. So in terms of books that align with curriculums, often when you're studying in school, you'll have set texts. So there's obviously a drive to create the audio format of those set texts. And I think this will translate in time into university and kind of business study, if you like. But it, as I say, is emerging at the current time. So it's not quite there yet. So the estimate varies depending which source you look at, but between 7 and 10% of printed material ends up being converted into audio format. So obviously that leaves kind of 90-odd% of titles that are available in print that haven't been recorded yet. So, this area is going to grow, and I think grow at quite a pace. But it's encouraging to see that expansion is happening now. And then the final thing is around discussion groups. So getting together with other learners to discuss what you've been listening to reinforce learning. Going back to the previous point about active listening, to be questioning and making sure that you really understand what the author's intention was. Sorry, I managed to come into a room with no water, so I hope my voice holds out. Okay, on to the next slide. And then practical ways to use audiobooks in everyday life. So for me, audiobooks represent kind of reading for pleasure for me. And so what I wanted to say here was that it's not for me to tell you how to use audiobooks, it's for you to discover what works for you. So I kind of put some conversation starters here, and maybe when we come to the end, we can chat about, what works for you. And if you've got tips that you can share with others, it'd be great to hear about those in the chat. So what I've said here is that there's no right or wrong way to listen to audiobooks. So some people like to listen to audiobooks in bed before they go to sleep, but others very much like to do it when they're occupied doing another task. So whether that's housework, running, taking the dog for a walk, on the daily commute. In my own household with my own dyslexic young people, they enjoy listening to audiobooks while making Lego models. So some of the intricate designs that take days to build, they're doing that alongside listening to audiobooks, or perhaps even painting or crafting. So it could be that you like to listen to audiobooks on your own, but actually there's no reason why you can't listen as a group. So we've experimented in doing that within schools with small groups of young adults. So you can listen on a speaker and listen, as a group of friends or as a family group. So it can be a collective activity. people tend to find how they like to listen. So whether that be on a speaker or whether it be like a personal, a solitary activity where they're using headphones, or from a practical perspective, headphones, because you're in a busy, noisy environment and that's the way that you can concentrate. For some people, it is just about immersing yourself in the audio and drifting away. But for others, it's about following the words in a book or on a screen. And as I said, it can be great to join a book group. We either call them accessible book groups, where people are either reading the text or listening, or it can be an audiobook specific group. It can be a great opportunity to explore those things that you've been listening to together. And my suggestion is, if you've tried audiobooks and you think, oh, I'm not sure that they're for me, I'd suggest trying different genres and also different narrators. The voice can be such a critical thing to get right. So a bit like when you watch a film, if you've read a book or had a book read to you and you think, oh, I didn't picture that person to look like that in the film. It's a bit like that with narrators. If you've got a voice in your head for how that character sounds, if the narrator doesn't sort of fit that same voice, it can be a bit jarring. So what I would say is, if you've ever tried and felt that audiobooks weren't for you, it could just be that you didn't hit on the right one first time. So it's always worth going back and trying others. And then the final tip there is about try listening at different speeds. So I can't speed them up and be able to concentrate, but lots of people find that actually they prefer to listen at higher speed than the narrator originally voiced it. So yeah, try it, see what works best for you. So my next slide is a little bit of an activity, and I don't know if you've got pen and paper to hand or if you just want to have a think about it. And maybe you want to pop in the chat. So I think that to have success with audiobooks, you've got to kind of create your own recipe of what works for you and how you will enjoy listening to them. So to consider where, when, what, how, and who. So where will you listen? Will it be like some of the pictures show you when you're on a form of transport like the bus, or is it when you're out walking, or is it curled up on your sofa or comfy chair? When will it be? Morning, afternoon, evening, in your lunch break, at the end of a busy day. What would suit you best? And what will you listen to? So, do you have a particular genre that you're interested in, or are you studying at the moment and doing a qualification? And would you want to absorb content related to that via audio? How relates to the how will you listen? Will it be on a speaker? Will it be in a group? Will it be on your own? So will it be with headphones on? And will it be a physical audiobook, so you can still get audiobooks on CD? Or would it be a digital download? Would it be an app on your smartphone or tablet? And who? So is it something you want to do on your own, or is it something that you prefer to do in a group? Or maybe if you want to listen to the book on your own first, would you then like to have the opportunity to discuss it with other people? So in the middle there, I put myself in the middle, and I was thinking about, well, how do I generally listen to audiobooks? So I've talked about having an app. So that would usually be on my smartphone or tablet. I would listen over headphones. So it means that it doesn't matter if other people are around me. I can lose myself in my audiobook without disturbing other people. For me, my preference is fiction, because I like to imagine different worlds and get lost in a scenario that's completely different to my everyday. But for you, it might be non-fiction. It might be autobiography. So what are you most interested in listening to? And I put there multitasking. So for me, I actually find my concentration is better when I'm doing something else. So as the little pictures that I've generated using an AI image generator show, I put in prompts for listening on the bus, or doing my cooking, or walking the dog. But are you more like the one in the lower right hand side of the screen? Do you need calm and zen and not a hive of activity going on around you to be able to concentrate? So have a think, and if you want to share in the chat what your recipe might look like. Okay, and coming on to our sort of final section about where can we find free and affordable audiobooks. So obviously, working for an audiobook charity, I had to put them first. So Calibre Audio provide free audiobooks to children and young adults under 25 years of age. So that membership means they've got unlimited access to our collection. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, we had to implement a small charge for adults older than 25, just because of the financial climate. So for adults, our membership is £3 a month or £30 a year. But as I say, it is unlimited. So it means that you can listen to as many audiobooks as you choose. So it still represents pretty good value. So it's quite a low cost solution. So less than the cost of one coffee shop coffee a month, you can have unlimited access to audio. But if you're looking for free audiobooks that are available freely all year round, my suggestion is to seek out your local public library service. So usually to become a member of your library, you just need to take some proof of address and your photo ID, and you can usually sign up for free library membership. And through them, they often provide access to one of the digital audiobook providers. So, for example, the Libby app, which is provided by Overdrive, or BorrowBox. And then also some libraries do still have CD borrowing, but typically that comes at a small charge. So the free way to listen is definitely to utilise digital streaming if you can. And then at the bottom there, I've listed some free or low cost commercial audiobook suppliers. So often they will give you a free trial or a low cost trial as a gateway into their subscription model. So probably the biggest provider of audiobooks in the world is Audible. So it looks at the moment, when I sort of checked on their website, that you could get a 99 pence a month subscription for your first 3 months, and then it's £7.99 a month. And that gives you 1 credit each month. And a credit usually translates to 1 audiobook title. So there are some free downloads within their collection where you don't actually have to use your credit. But you know, the best-selling authors, usually their titles cost 1 credit. So that's kind of the model that they use. There's another provider called All You Can Books who offer a 30-day free trial, but then it is quite expensive. So they don't do the pricing in pounds, so they cost $24.99, but in US dollars. But it does give you unlimited downloads. So unlike Audible, where you only get 1 credit for your $7.99, at least with your $24.99, or you can get as many titles as you want. So if you get through lots, then that might actually work out more affordable than Audible. So I've popped it down. Another provider that you might not think of for audio, or audiobook specifically, is Spotify. So obviously Spotify is well known for their music subscription. So if you're a Spotify premium music subscriber, now within that package, you can get 15 hours of audiobook listening included. So if you're already a subscriber there, that's a free way for you to access audiobooks. If you don't already use Spotify for music, you can get a 1 month free trial from them. And then after that trial, it's £11.99 a month as a premium member. But the thing is it is a 15-hour of audiobook cap. So any unused listening hours actually expire at the end of the month, and they don't carry over, unfortunately. So if you've got a really lengthy novel that you're listening to, you might not be able to do it in a month with Spotify. And then the final one that I've mentioned there is called Zigzag, but spelt with X's, which isn't a subscription model. It's a pay and go model, but they offer better prices the more that you listen. So if you just buy 1 audiobook, it costs you about £7.99. But actually, if you end up buying lots of titles from them, the cost goes down to more like £3.99 for each title. So if you don't want to be locked into a subscription, then that one is quite a good provider to check out. So those are my top tips. And then the final few slides, I've just got some quotes from some of our Calibre Audio members about what it means to them. So Gareth's a student with dyslexia. He told us that he absolutely loves listening to audiobooks and he's not sure what he'd do without them. The next one is a young person, so still at school. So Toby. So Mum told us that discovering Calibre was a game changer and that the gift of the book offers so much more than the pages it's written on, that it supports education, self-esteem and social interaction. And then my final quote, the blue slide, is from Patricia. So she reflected on sort of her sort of journey with reading. So she says, I always had problems with reading and my mum took me to be assessed for dyslexia when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was fortunate enough to have had a helpful teacher who gave me extra lessons, and as a result, my reading improved, but I still struggled. It's much easier for me to understand the story if I can listen to it rather than having to read it. The beauty of audiobooks is that I don't miss out. I can still have as good an access to the experience of reading as someone else who can read more easily. Okay, and the last slide just says thank you for listening, so we can open up for questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was super insightful. Let me try to turn my camera back on for the question and answer. There we go. Great. So we do have a question in the chat box. Are you able to see it yourself from Stuart?
Yeah, I will be.
Great. So it says, why is that listening to an audiobook makes you feel more purposeful? It's definitely true. I don't understand why. Talking about I used to read Kindle, and when I went to bed, I was tired. I would have Alexa read to me with Audible. I'm like listening to the previews. And I also asked a general question. So, who is everyone's favorite audiobook or authors? I think this is an answer to that, talking about Nick Alexander. Alexa, and this is some tips for our audience as well for books that are not on audiobook yet, but are available on Kindle. You can ask Alexa to read it to you. So that's a very good tip as well. I sometimes choose Alexa to narrate because I don't like the American voices that narrate some US politics books. Valid. I like audio biographies when read by the author, like Rupert Everett and Prince Harry. Great. So I think the other part is probably less of a question, but I will let you answer the first part of that.
So why is listening to an audiobook, why does it make you feel like it's more purposeful? I guess that it is just that ability to be able to multitask. So whether you have dyslexia, whether you have any form of disability, when you are reading text, yes, I know some people can read walking along. I've never mastered that art. I fall over. But it's actually really hard to do anything other than actually focus on the print text in front of you. So I guess by listening to the audiobook, it means that you can combine another enjoyable activity potentially alongside it. Or as I cited in my slides, it can make kind of a mundane task more enjoyable. So for me, you know, if I'm cooking, which I have to say I don't really enjoy, it can pass the time for me, and I feel like I'm doing something that I do enjoy alongside the task that perhaps I don't. But that's quite a subjective answer.
Yeah, great. And one of the questions I have for you, because I was an English major, I was a dual major, but my double major was English in school. And I look back and I'm like, I think audiobooks can really change, you know, who feels comfortable like going into majors like that. And I'm curious if there's any like science, like sometimes my professors in higher ed would like pull out quotes or something to make sure you read the actual text. I'm just curious, is there any research that you all have found where if I were tested from on stuff like that, like, you know, tell me who this quote is from, would I be able to pull that out the same way as if I were reading it. So like would my brain probably remember it the same as if I were reading it? Because you know how it's like the test is a paper test and you see it, and then the book is paper, so you see it. I'm just curious how that might impact higher ed.
That's a really interesting question. And so there have been studies to compare whether you retain as much by listening as by reading. But interestingly, it doesn't look at people who have neurodivergent conditions. So, they're not necessarily, exploring that question in the context of dyslexia. So there is some evidence in kind of neurotypical students that you retain more by reading the print text than by listening. But that's why in the section where I talked about using audiobooks for education, where I highlighted the importance of active listening and note taking around it. So I think it's some of the evidence that I've seen is slightly unfair, because certainly when I was studying English literature and I was reading the text, I was required to make my own notes and summarize in my own words, some of the ideas that I was reading. So it feels a bit unfair to say, well, by listening, you lose something, because actually they weren't saying, but when you're listening, still use those active skills of summarizing and note taking. So I'm really interested in looking at the evidence that pertains to groups who would struggle to find the meaning by reading alone. And that's why I'm passionate about doing the research within kind of the school and the college setting for learners that can't access by reading alone. So what is the value of audio format for those learners? But yeah, it's an interesting question. So I would say that the evidence isn't there to support audio alone, but that's possibly because they've done it with a group of neurotypical learners.
Valid. Yeah, that makes sense. Another question, and of course, anyone who has any questions to put them in the chat box or in the Q&A. I'm checking both. Oh, Stuart has another addition. I wonder if you can ask AI to read to you. I believe you can, but correct me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI is obviously exploding at the moment, isn't it? So we at the Calibre audio team were at the London Book Fair, which was last month, and there were a huge number of organisations that want to bring AI into the reading space. So a few years back, if you had an AI generated voice, you'd be able to pick it out immediately. It would sound synthetic, it would sound robotic. It wouldn't give you necessarily the best kind of listening experience, but obviously technology is moving so quickly. And all the discussion on kind of social media and things around deep fake and videos that are actually AI. Often now it's hard to pick out what's AI and what is actually a genuine human. So it will be interesting to see how it moves forward. What I would say is that publishers and authors are really hesitant at the moment about the role that AI has to play, and some of that's around kind of intellectual property and copyright and that sort of thing. So we at Calibre don't use AI, so we use all genuine human voices. So what we can do is we can record an audiobook of any print book that exists where there isn't already a commercial audiobook. So that means that we're not bound by the latest bestseller or making money. So we use volunteer narrators to voice those titles that perhaps wouldn't be recorded as audiobooks otherwise. And then we're also really fortunate to have good relationships with publishers, and many of the big publishers donate their commercial audiobooks to us. So every week our collection is growing, either through titles where we create our own bespoke recording using volunteer narrators, or via the donated or purchased commercial audiobooks.
Okay, great. Great, thank you. I'm curious too, are there any other trends that you all are noticing? Like what books have been extra popular? Um, any other trends that you're noticing as you look ahead?
Um, so often trends in audio reflect kind of the trends that you see in the charts in terms of popular best-selling books. Each year we do a Calibre Book Awards. So I know that, for example, Stuart mentioned Prince Harry. I know that Prince Harry's book Spare was one of the most popular audiobook titles. Consistently for many, many years, the Harry Potter books have been a huge success in audio. But obviously, equally, they've been a huge success worldwide for people that read the original books or indeed just find their way to Harry Potter through the films. So, yeah, I think in terms of kind of latest trends, there's been is it romantasy that's kind of come out as a genre that people are really interested in. So fantasy romance crossover. That's not a genre that I've explored personally. But yeah, we try and keep up with the latest, the latest trends and add them to our collection.
Great. And I also have another question for you. Um, so someone said, brilliant, massively helpful presentation. Thank you. I paused my adult further study when I had my dyslexia assessment before lockdown to work with a tutor to understand how my brain/dyslexia works, but had to stop for lockdown. I want to finish my course and wondered how soon course books will become audio. How quickly can this format be put into practice?
That's a really good question. So it does depend on your course provider. And some of the academic publishers are exploring audio formats. Some are a bit more hesitant to do it for whatever reason. But as Stuart kind of mentioned in his suggestions earlier in the chat, there are more and more software tools that we can use to read aloud text for us. And whereas the technology a few years back would have made that sound quite clunky and quite robotic, the newer features are meaning that the voices do sound more authentic. And I certainly think that this is a space where AI might have a role in terms of bringing it forward more quickly. I think the challenge is that course texts often have quite a niche audience. So when we think about what titles publishers are keen to put into audiobook, they're always thinking about their bottom line and what's going to make them money. So if it's considered to be niche, they might not see that it's going to be rewarding for them to do so, which is a shame when it's the format that so many people would benefit from. But as I say, that might be where AI and accessibility features within your IT packages could come in and actually read aloud for you.
Great. Good insight. Thank you so much, Helen. I will give a little second in case anyone has any last minute questions, but I think we answered them all in the chat box and also in the Q&A box. I definitely agree with the last question that this was a really helpful presentation, and thank you so much for sharing more information on audiobooks, how it benefits adults with dyslexia, and how we can access them. I actually had no idea how many places are offering audiobooks now. Yes, thank you so much. And how many places are offering audiobooks now and how accessible they are. For those of you who asked, yes, this presentation will be available on the website soon. And also we will have the slides available for you so you can go back and review anything. And Helen, is there for people interested in learning more about your organization. Can you speak on that?
Of course, yeah. So what I can do is I can put my email address in the chat so that if anyone has any questions and they'd rather ask it directly of me, that they can contact me
Great.
directly. And on obviously on the previous slides where I showed where you can find audiobooks, that's the Calibre web address that you would use. So www.calibreaudio.org.uk. And you can obviously find out more about us there. So that's the main two ways to get in touch, either via the website or via email.
Great. And we just actually had one more question come through at the end, but that's great. Have you found the academic community on board with audio textbooks?
So I kind of addressed that in the last question. So for a publisher at the moment, whether or not they choose to put something into audio does often relate to, how many copies do they think that they'll be able to sell of a commercial audiobook. So as I say, it depends on the mass market appeal. So if you're doing quite a niche subject, then possibly there aren't the number of students to make it very attractive to a publisher to create audio themselves. But something that Calibre are doing is exploring working with publishers so that we can create content for our members. So we haven't managed to sort of roll that into sort of the university or college setting as such. But what we have done is we have recorded our first study guide for GCSE, for example. So my honest answer to the academic world is I'm sure that they're watching and are very interested in whether there's a value in them doing audio formats. But it might be that we're just not quite at the tipping point for them to dip their toe in. So that's where a charity like Calibre, who don't have to worry about profit, can step in and help.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to end. So let me see how I exit out this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, so thank you so much, Helen. For those who are interested in learning more, we have Helen's email. You know where to see them on the website, and we've been tagging them on social media as well. Thank you so much. This will be available shortly for everyone to view whenever they wish to, and for those who weren't able to attend.